They took credit for my work, but they forgot one thing I never forget. My name is Madeline Maddie Carter, and for years, I had poured myself into projects, late nights, and endless revisions at Bright Edge Marketing, believing that hard work alone would earn respect. I had been meticulous, precise, and quietly brilliant, crafting campaigns that wowed clients and exceeded every expectation. But in a world where visibility is everything, my efforts were invisible, except to Claire Donovan, my so-called colleague and friend. Claire was the kind of person who could light up a room without doing the work. Charismatic, persuasive, and always perfectly poised, she thrived on applause, but she had a talent for directing it away from me. At first, I had trusted her. We shared brainstorming sessions, late-night edits, and coffee runs. I had thought we were partners in creativity. But the moment she realized my ideas had potential, she claimed them. Every strategy one pitched, every insight I carefully documented, somehow became hers in meetings. Clients praised her. Executives nodded. And I smiled politely, swallowed my frustration, and let it slide. Bright Edge Marketing was a competitive world, sleek and modern, but underneath the polished conference rooms and designer furniture, it was ruthless. Promotions were scarce, recognition rarer, and credit was currency. Claire had mastered the art of playing the game, making it appear as if I were merely a supporting character in the story she was crafting. Even outside of work, she framed herself as indispensable. Networking events, social gatherings, even casual lunches, Claire's laughter dominated, her presence commanding attention, while I faded into the background, unnoticed. She had convinced everyone I was competent but not exceptional, capable but not remarkable. I had believed her influence was harmless, until the awards meeting last quarter. There it was, the final, undeniable act of betrayal. My campaign, the one I had designed from scratch, had won campaign of the quarter. I walked into the presentation room, ready to discuss metrics and insights, only to hear Claire's name announced as the architect. Executives applauded her. She smiled, flawless and assured, as if the months of work I had invested were mere shadows, irrelevant to the celebration. I wanted to speak. I wanted to scream. But I swallowed every word, letting the injustice settle like a stone in my chest. That stone didn't break me, it weighed me down, sharpening a dangerous resolve I hadn't realized was forming. Because here's what Claire didn't understand, I notice. I remember. And eventually, every borrowed victory comes with a cost. As I left the room, applauding her with a polite nod, I felt it, a quiet pulse of determination. This was far from over. And one day, she would beg for the approval she had so carelessly stolen. At first, the slights seemed small, almost unnoticeable. A meeting where my suggestions were dismissed, only for Claire to repeat them moments later and receive praise. A client email she forwarded as our team's idea, with my contribution erased. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was coincidence, a misunderstanding, or simply the competitive nature of the office. But the pattern grew harder to ignore. Claire had a way of controlling the room without raising suspicion. She would subtly rearrange agendas so my talking points came last, ensuring that by the time I spoke, attention had drifted. She shared incomplete information with me, only to accuse me of missing deadlines or details. It was a dance I didn't understand at first, until I realized she was leading every step. Even her charm became a weapon. She smiled at executives in a way that made them trust her unquestioningly. She laughed at my jokes just enough to seem friendly, while simultaneously planting doubts about my competency. Colleagues who had once supported me began to distance themselves, unsure whether I was overreacting or imagining slights. I began second-guessing myself, wondering if I was too sensitive, too meticulous, or simply incapable of commanding attention. Then came the more blatant acts. Files I had saved to shared drives were subtly altered, with my name removed from the authorship. A campaign deck I had painstakingly crafted appeared in a meeting, credited entirely to Claire, with minor edits she made to appear like original work. My stomach twisted, my hands shook, but I had no proof. It was her word against mine, and the company always favored the one who smiled. The emotional toll was immense. I started lying to myself about what was happening, pretending it didn't matter. Nights were restless, filled with anxiety over whether I'd be caught in another of her manipulations. Coffee breaks became tense, casual chats a minefield. Every day, the office became a theater where I was always one step behind, always unseen, always unheard. The tipping point came one evening when I stayed late to finish a presentation for an important client. Claire happened to walk by my desk, peering over my shoulder. She complimented my work, too sweetly, too knowingly, and then whispered, "Don't get too attached, you know how these things go." Her words were casual, almost friendly, but I felt a chill creep up my spine. She knew exactly how to unsettle me, how to remind me that no matter how hard I worked, recognition wasn't mine to claim. Something about that comment hinted at premeditation, a deliberate effort to control, undermine, and dominate. I shut down my computer, heart racing. The office was quiet now, the hum of fluorescent lights the only sound. I realized I wasn't just competing with a colleague, I was being hunted. And for the first time, I truly wondered, how far will she go? The answer would not remain a mystery for long. The morning of the client presentation, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. This was my chance to shine, to finally take credit for the work I had poured myself into for months. The slides were polished, the strategy airtight, every word rehearsed to perfection. I imagined the room's applause, the acknowledgement I deserved. Then Claire walked in. She smiled at the clients and executives as if nothing had ever happened between us. As the meeting began, I watched in disbelief while she presented my ideas with flawless confidence. Every chart I had created, every market insight I had analyzed, every innovative approach I had painstakingly built was being delivered as her own. The executives leaned forward, nodding and scribbling notes. Applause followed at every clever point she made. I froze. My chest tightened. My stomach sank. Shock gave way to a searing mix of anger and heartbreak. The betrayal wasn't subtle anymore, it was blatant, public, undeniable. Everything I had done, every ounce of effort I had invested, had been stolen and sold back to me in the form of praise for her. When she smiled at the clients and said, "This strategy is what my team and I developed," I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and shout that she was lying, that it was my work, my late nights, my vision, but the words lodged in my throat. I realized that in that moment, no one would believe me. The polished narrative she had built was stronger than my truth. After the meeting, I retreated to the empty conference room, my hands shaking, tears stinging my eyes. The weight of the injustice pressed down on me like a physical force. I had been professional, diligent, and loyal, and yet, I was invisible. Every professional milestone I had hoped to achieve had been stolen from me. Promotions I deserved were delayed. Clients who should have trusted my expertise were praising her brilliance instead. Financial opportunities, recognition, and the respect I had worked tirelessly to earn had been hijacked. And it wasn't just professional. The betrayal cut into my personal sense of self-worth. I had trusted her. I had shared ideas, insights, and confidence, believing we were partners. Instead, she had weaponized that trust, turning my contributions into her stepping stones while leaving me to watch from the sidelines. Sitting alone, I felt the initial shock giving way to a simmering determination. Anger turned to clarity. This wasn't a moment for despair, it was a moment to strategize. I had been invisible, yes, but now I knew exactly who I was up against and how carefully she had plotted my erasure. A single thought crystallized in my mind, cold and electric: she thinks she's untouchable. She doesn't know the storm she's about to face. I took a deep breath, standing and looking at my reflection in the glass wall. The girl who had been erased, ignored, and silenced would not stay that way. The question now was simple: how will I make her pay for every stolen victory, every undermined opportunity, every moment she tried to make me invisible? And more importantly, when will the world see the truth, and when will she finally beg for my approval? For the next few days, I walked through Brightedge like a ghost, haunted by Claire's betrayal. Every corner reminded me of the stolen credit, every casual mention of my name twisted with false praise for her. I tried to distract myself, to focus on minor tasks, but the ache of injustice refused to fade. Then it happened, a quiet, almost accidental discovery that lit a fire I couldn't ignore. I was reorganizing files on the shared server when I noticed something unusual: multiple drafts of my campaigns, carefully edited and renamed with Claire's initials. Some slides had minor tweaks, but the backbone, the research, the insights, the strategies, was unmistakably mine. Even more revealing were the comments in the document history, where she had written things like "make this sound like my idea." No one must trace it back to her. It was no longer subtle. No longer accidental. She had intentionally planned every step to erase me and take the credit for herself. That was the moment I realized the stakes. Claire wasn't just ambitious, she was calculated, ruthless, and skilled at masking deceit with charm. Anger surged, but it was sharp, focused, and precise. I felt a new kind of clarity, one that wasn't clouded by heartbreak or disbelief. I understood then that despair would get me nowhere. Rage without strategy would accomplish nothing. But strategy fueled by patience and proof? That could topple an empire. I began documenting everything. Emails, drafts, timestamps, memos, witness statements, all recorded meticulously. I reached out quietly to colleagues who had noticed inconsistencies but stayed silent, people I could trust. Laura from graphics and Anton from analytics became my allies, ready to provide discreet support. I trained myself to remain calm, to present facts without emotion, and to wait for the perfect moment. Every interaction became a rehearsal for the confrontation that would one day come. I wasn't just surviving, I was preparing, strengthening, building the foundation for a reckoning Claire would never see coming. By the end of the week, I sat in my apartment, dossier open on my laptop. The cursor blinked, waiting for a single word. I typed it: plan. I realized something profound. I was no longer the overlooked, invisible assistant. The quiet, compliant girl who had let others take her work and her credit had disappeared. In her place stood someone deliberate, patient, and unstoppable. I had learned that shadows could conceal power just as effectively as they could conceal weakness. I leaned back, taking a deep breath, and whispered to myself, this isn't about revenge alone. It's about justice. She tried to erase me, but soon, she will see that the truth cannot be hidden. She will beg for the approval she stole, and I will decide whether to give it. Quiet, controlled, resolute, I made my decision. I would fight back. And when I did, it wouldn't be messy or reckless. It would be inevitable. Revenge didn't feel like fury anymore, it felt like work. I treated it like any major campaign: audit the evidence, map the stakeholders, control the narrative. Claire still glided through Brightedge like a queen, hair perfect, smile ready, completely unaware that her throne was wobbling under the weight of the proof I was assembling. Step 1: Receipts. I pulled everything I'd ever produced: raw data spreadsheets, draft decks with my notes in the margins, autosave versions with timestamps, and email threads showing when ideas were first shared. Metadata became my witness, version histories were my allies. I printed, labeled, and encrypted copies. No more he said she said, just cold, verifiable timelines that aligned with every sleepless night I'd logged. Step 2: Witnesses. Not everyone wanted drama. Many feared Claire's charm as much as they resented her politics. So I started small and surgical: private coffees, confidential chats, fact-based requests for clarification. Laura in graphics handed over originals that matched my comps. Anton in analytics forwarded raw spreadsheets showing my name in the revision history. One by one, quiet confessions turned into written notes. They didn't want a crusade, they wanted fairness. I promised them discretion and delivered a path to safety. Step 3, Legal Perimeter. I consulted an employment attorney under the guise of an unrelated HR question. Hypotheticals turned into specifics. The lawyer explained how to document everything so HR couldn't sweep it aside: formal emails, dated complaints, and a calm, factual filing. I opened an internal HR case, not with a shout, but with a paper trail that would force an audit if anyone tried to bury it. Step 4, The Trap. Public exposure without airtight evidence is theater, and theater can be rewritten. So I built a dossier, side-by-side slides highlighting identical language, email headers, signed witness statements, and an audio clip Laura had captured of Claire boasting about steering narratives. I duplicated the dossier and stored copies with friends outside the firm, with a trusted reporter who had broken stories before, and with my lawyer. The goal wasn't humiliation for humiliation's sake, it was irrefutable accountability. Step 5, Timing and Theater. Claire loved stages, award nights, client showcases, moments where applause confirmed her worth. The annual Bright Edge Client Showcase, cameras, investors, key clients, would be crowded, televised, and impossible to spin away. I coordinated with Julia in AV to be ready to switch feeds, confirmed the compliance officer's attendance, and let the reporter know the dossier would go live if HR didn't act. Every contingency had a contingency: backup drives, encrypted emails scheduled to send, legal counsel on call. All the while, Claire strutted through the office, laughing with partners, plotting her next big reveal. Her confidence was my cover: the more untouchable she felt, the more reckless she became. She sent a triumphant text that week: "Tonight, we celebrate." And I saved it. On the night before the showcase, I sat alone by the window, dossier closed on my lap, heart steady. My phone buzzed, a single message from the reporter: "Ready when you are." I inhaled, tightened my grip on the folder, and walked out into the cool, fluorescent-lit hallway toward the elevator. The doors slid shut, and for a second the world narrowed to a single choice. Then my thumb hovered over the little USB labeled evidence_final. I pressed it in. The showcase glittered like a promise: spotlights, cameras, clients in tuxes and gowns, the kind of night that makes reputations permanent. Claire moved through the crowd wrapped in smug certainty, her laugh a practiced melody that had always drowned me out. Tonight, she expected applause. Tonight, she expected to be untouchable. I sat 3 rows back, dossier in my lap, Julia at the AV console, Anton at the tech table. My hands were steady. Months of evidence, timestamps, side-by-side slides, emails, signed witness notes, felt heavier than any weight I'd carried. This wasn't theater. It was proof. And it would be impossible to spin away. Claire climbed the stage to accept the Campaign Excellence Award. The room rose, lights softened, cameras found her smile. The presenter praised her leadership, her vision. Claire opened her mouth to deliver the practiced speech she'd given 100 times in rehearsals. Then the screen behind her split. On the left, her polished deck. On the right, my original slides, raw drafts, change logs, email headers with my name and timestamps, Laura's audio clip of Claire laughing about steering narratives. A silence like a held breath swept the room. Phones rose. Faces registered confusion, then disbelief. Cameras swung. I stood. My voice was calm, precise. Everything you're seeing is mine. Every insight, every chart, created and documented before she ever touched them. I clicked the remote. An edited audio clip played, Claire's private brag, clear as a confession. Her composure cracked in real time. She tried to smile, then to charm, then to deflect, but the evidence was surgical. Executives who had clapped now frowned. The compliance officer I'd briefed stood and announced an immediate suspension pending investigation. A hush fell as security moved, discreet but certain. Reporters, already tipped, leaned forward with notepads and hungry eyes. Social feeds that had been prepped for glamour lit up with screenshots and timestamps. Claire's empire, built on stolen lines and polished lies, began to crumble. Contracts flagged for review, clients sent curt withdrawal emails, an investor messaged the CEO asking for an audit. The award on stage suddenly seemed absurd, a glittering prop in the ruin of her reputation. She lunged for damage control, smiles, explanations, a practiced anecdote, but the room no longer bought the performance. Her allies stepped back, uncertain. The patrons who once toasted her now whispered about ethics and legal exposure. Her phone buzzed endlessly, texts turned from supportive to alarmed in seconds. And then she did something that stopped the room cold. Claire's voice, raw, small, reached me. She stepped off the stage, shoulders slumped, and walked straight toward me through the stunned crowd. Cameras pivoted. The woman who had taken my work, my recognition, my chances, now stood before me with her eyes wide and desperate. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking, "tell them it wasn't like this. Tell them, please, say I did good. Please, Madeline, please approve it. Please." It was humiliation made flesh. She was begging for my approval, the very thing she stole from me for her own elevation. The crowd watched as power shifted like a tide. I looked at her for a long, steady second. Then I closed the dossier, lifted my chin, and walked out into the flash of cameras and the murmur of a world finally seeing the truth. Behind me, Claire's knees buckled. Security helped her to a chair. The spotlight that had once been hers collapsed into darkness. I stood in the light, breathing, victorious, not because I wanted to humiliate, but because justice had arrived. The girl whose work they had taken was finally the one they couldn't ignore. The morning after the showcase, the office buzzed with a different energy. Claire's carefully constructed reputation had crumbled overnight. Headlines appeared online, stolen work exposed at Bright Edge Gala, rising star reclaims credit in stunning reveal, they took credit for her work, now she's in the spotlight. Social media feeds lit up with screenshots, emails, and side-by-side slide comparisons that left no doubt, Claire had stolen my work. Contracts she had signed in confidence were paused. Clients who once hailed her brilliance now requested meetings with me. Investors questioned every project she had touched. Her suspension had quickly escalated into a full internal investigation. The empire she had built on charm, manipulation, and theft was collapsing piece by piece, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Meanwhile, I moved through the office differently. I was no longer invisible. Colleagues stopped me in the hallways to congratulate me quietly, apologize for overlooking my contributions, or ask for guidance on new projects. Invitations I'd never received before came my way. Recognition, respect, and authority were finally mine, and they had nothing to do with spectacle, only truth and persistence. The CEO called me into his office. "Madeline, your work has always been exceptional. We failed to notice it before, but that changes today. I want you to lead the upcoming international campaign." His tone was firm, sincere, and approving. I nodded, quietly acknowledging the victory that was both professional and deeply personal. Claire, on the other hand, became a cautionary tale. Social media dissected her missteps, and industry forums debated her ethics. Invitations were rescinded, colleagues avoided her. She had spent years mocking me, belittling me, and erasing me, but now she lived in the shadow of my triumph. Every stolen victory she thought would cement her reputation had only amplified my eventual rise. Poetic justice is patient. It doesn't scream or demand attention, it waits. And when it arrives, it hits with the quiet force of inevitability. Claire had tried to claim my achievements as her own, but the world now watched as she begged for approval she no longer deserved. The girl who had been overlooked, silenced, and underestimated now stood at the center of the room, unshakable, undeniable, and free. To you, watching this story unfold, have you ever been betrayed or erased by someone who thought they were untouchable? Share your experiences in the comments below. Let others know they are not alone, and that patience, strategy, and resilience can bring justice. If you felt chills seeing this journey from theft to triumph, subscribe for more stories of ultimate victory, resilience, and poetic justice. Remember this: they may take your work, your ideas, even your recognition, but one day, they will see the girl they tried to erase standing taller, brighter, and stronger than ever before.